Richard. How are you?
Hi Sam, I'm all right, thanks very much. How's it going?
Fine, thank you. Yeah, how's it with you?
Great, great. And where in the world are you at the moment? You're at home, right?
Yeah, I'm at Shiplake. Yeah.
You're in Shiplake, and I'm at my office in Chelsea, albeit on my own, as I have been for a while now.
Okay. Well,
So we're going to do some questions today. So just fire away. Tell me, what do you want to know?
yeah. Okay. So my first question for you is, what inspired you to go into the field? So, do you have like a family background in design?
I don't. I mean, my great uncle was a graphic designer for Shell, but funnily enough, um, I'm not sure if it's something which kind of it runs in the family, but certainly my family was involved. My grandmother, I have the clearest memory of my grandmother having a typewriter. She was the secretary of the local amateur dramatic society, and I would go around to her house and use the typewriter manically to create little signs and notices for my bedroom door. And that was my first kind of inkling of wanting to put ink on paper. And it's an instinct which has never really left me ever since. I've always just wanted to design things. Of course, we do a lot of digital work now, but the idea of doing something that you can hold, of creating something physical, the appeal of that is never gone.
Okay, great. Yeah. So, what sort of choices did you make at my age? So, sort of 16 or 17 in terms of education.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And so one of the things is that if you want to be a graphic designer, I think this was for me sort of around 1990. If that's going to date me horribly, but that's roughly when it was. And I was lucky because the school I was at had various computer systems, which was quite ahead of its time. They had Mac pluses as school computers. And this was sort of the dawn of the desktop publishing age. And so it kind of like, if you start with the typewriter story and then you move to that bit, it was suddenly on screen, all this could happen, and with lovely typefaces in a way that just hadn't existed anywhere before. So I had a kind of a window seat, if you like, a kind of ability to do that. And so at school, I was creating posters, I was doing theatre programs, I was doing signs and all this kind of stuff. That this instinct, as I said, like to kind of create and make things, never quite left me. But there wasn't a clear path for me, kind of career-wise. It wasn't obvious. All my friends were doing things like going to Oxford to study English, or I don't know what. Something very, very cerebral. All I wanted to do was create. And I remember coming across a leaflet from the London College of Printing, which is now the LCC. College of Communications, and suddenly it was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. That's my kind of my next step. So I put everything I'd done into this book. I investigated a course, and at that point, there was something called a kind of the National Diploma. It was called. I'm not sure it sort of really exists anymore, but the idea was a bit like a foundation course for artists. It was something that felt more kind of akin to the kind of graphic design that I've been doing, but was a stepping stone to a degree. And I went after 2 years at London College of Printing, where there's a funny sidebar actually. The chair of Shine, Alison Strachan, was at the London College of Printing at exactly the same time. So we now work together all the time, but we were actually in the same building, just one floor apart for 2 years, which is crazy. But anyway, I left London College of Printing and I went to Goldsmiths to study design studies, which was really interesting and a real revelation, and far more sort of liberal and wild and wacky. And that had to be that was sort of the opposite of London College of Printing. But I hope that kind of like gives you a sense of kind of an educational flow anyway. I needed a thing to follow my conventional education before it took me to my career. And I got lucky by coming into the London College of Printing and discovering it.
Okay, yeah, that's really good. Yeah, so it sort of answered the next question of were you involved in graphic design and publication at school? But
well, actually, yeah, I was, and actually, but that was sort of, and actually, this is one of the reasons I love Shine so much. But at school, I remember this very sort of serious and highly polished school publication covering triumphs of people doing rugby and cricket and rowing or whatever else. And and artistic achievements and school plays called, and this was this sort of very kind of glossy magazine which was given to parents. And then one of the younger masters created, I think rather inspired on Private Eye, a riff on that, which was all photocopied and really kind of like inky. And it was called the Pooper Scooper, which was hysterical and a massively satirical, and everyone was of course obsessed with it. But it was a school magazine, and I think interestingly, there's a lot of kind of school magazines we see now at Shine that are sort of have a pinch of that to them. What's quite interesting is that that school kids might want to do something more like the more austere one, more serious one. That I find that sort of the duality of that quite interesting. But there we go. So that's my background.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so do you have a favorite designer or design company that inspires you?
I'm glad you told me about this question beforehand, because normally, sometimes it's very easy to like draw a blank on questions like that. But I thought of three, and I found three books to tell you about. The first one is by a graphic designer called Paul Rand, and this is an incredibly rare book I was lucky to find years ago. And Paul Rand designed logos for companies like IBM, and is an American graphic designer, incredibly revered, and had very strict rules of discipline, of clarity of purpose, of cleanness of line, of unfussiness, which I kind of hold true to this day. The second one is a man called Alan Fletcher, and this is his book, The Art of Looking Sideways. And it's huge, like it's really, really big, but it's, I suppose it was published in about 2002, 2003, I think. And when I was in my first job, I worked at Conran Design Group at that time. Everyone was blown away and so excited by this book. I was flicking through it the other day. I still think it's fantastic. It's sort of, Alan Fletcher is one of the founders of Pentagram, which is really an iconic graphic design, brand design now, company, and he's a god. And the other guy who I really, really like is a man called Alan Kitching, who's a British designer of type and letterpress type in particular. And he actually signed this book for me because I went to a talk by him. But basically, and you'll often see his posters around. They use letterpress, letter block type, and hand-rolled ink. And I think what's quite interesting about these three people is that you've got someone very, very tight and disciplined and kind of clean. Then you've got someone who's like this mad brain, this kind of this inspiring, amazing figure. And then you've got someone who is also incredible, but like it's inky fingers. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I think if I could kind of like crystallize in a nutshell what the things I like about graphic design, it would be those three things. So you've got like the crisp and detailed, this sort of trying to be a bit maverick and inspirational, and then finally something special and handmade, which interestingly I think is one of the things I try and do as much as I can on the web. We do a lot of web design in my business, and it can get very, very kind of pixely, and it's nice to kind of smush it up. So that's my answer.
That's really interesting. I'll definitely check some of them out. Yeah, so my next question is, how do you stay organized as a designer and sort of managing other people in the design team?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because organized is such an interesting word, because creativity needs to in some way be harnessed, needs to be kind of, it needs to kind of be wild and then tamed. Equally, I run a business and I have 3 people working for me at the moment. Right now, I've got like a couple of freelancers on and off as well. There's only got all these people like firing questions at you all day, which is daunting. And then you've got to kind of look after clients who need kind of managing their projects, gently moved along. And yes, this is coming. It's all, don't worry about it. It's all going to happen. And you have to kind of explain all that. In the business, to stay organized, we use a piece of great technology called Slack, which is a kind of like a chat application, but it has channels, which means that we can communicate across projects, sometimes with a client, interestingly, and then of course different members of my team who are working on the same project at the same time, so that we have the things in topics. And it's a really great way because you can sort files as well, and the guys who are working for me can just quickly send me a sketch or an idea that they're having. And that's what, just in terms of like people management, and particularly now, I'm sitting in this studio space on my own, whereas normally, and I hope it will be back again soon, I'd have like the team and the guys here, and we can kind of bounce each other ideas off each other. Can't do that. We have to find another way, and we've done that very successfully. But thank God for modern technology.
So you talked briefly there about your team, and sort of how important would you say the creative process is in your designs?
Well, the creative process is really important, but it's what creative process it is, and it varies each time, which is why that's such an interesting question. And the process on a website, for instance, the process on designing a logo, process on designing a brochure for somebody, each of these kind of has individual kind of quirks, but you've all got to base it on something. And I think that you've got to, and so basing it on something and starting with something is super important. And I think visual research is an amazing way to start. And I've got these 3 books I was just showing you, but that will be one place to start, obviously, like design monographs. But I think going beyond that, to look on the web at like what other people are doing, what trends there are. Funnily enough, sometimes you have to design against something. Like you can't design a logo that someone's already designed, perhaps obviously, but when everyone's designing logos at 1,000,000 miles an hour every single day of every single year, one of the challenges is to understand what everyone else is doing, and then you have to create something different. You have to know what's out there, and so that's part of the process. So research visually to inspire you, and to also kind of know your what pitfalls to avoid, and that's a really great starting point. I can go on about the design process till the cows come home, but visual research and really kind of like getting your hands dirty, getting excited about something, and forging a direction with the work is the place to start. The only place to start. Sometimes you can sit down and come up with the best logo in the world. It won't be, because the second one you come up with once you're in visual research is better, always.
Okay, yeah. So you've done work for Shine and their website, the sort of branding and the publications. What were you keeping in mind for their brand identity?
Oh, it's a really nice question. Well, funnily enough, the Shine reason I became involved in Shine was through the stationers company, the ancient City of London livery company, and I joined the committee later, a year or 2 later, after having offered to design the winner's book. And Shine sort of had a logo, and at that point it was a few years in, but there was such an opportunity to do something really creative and fantastic that I felt could then rise up to match the aspirations of the people who were entering the competition, to create a piece of print, do a brand design which felt super distinctive and super inspiring. So at the beginning of this video, you'll see the logo is now animated. The logo was not animated before, but it is now. We employed an amazing video artist to do that for this series. And so what's quite funny is that when you design a brand, it evolves, it moves on. We sharpened up the logo this year. It's kind of less fussy, less kind of, there are less elements to it, but it is not materially different from what it was before. But 6 or 7 years in, we just felt, oh, you know what, there's a little kind of a tightening up job to do. So I became involved with Shine because of the winner's book, and then we did the brand as part of that. You see what I mean? So it was really that. So just for people who don't know, when you enter the awards, when you attend the awards, God willing, next year, we give everyone a book as they leave, with everyone who's won and have been highly commended, with essays, with a letter from the master of the stationers company, usually from the chair, and 1 or 2 other things. And even this year we managed to do it, and we try and make it a really exciting piece of print. And going back to also what I was saying about creating something really dynamic and beautiful, it's the opportunity I get each year to create something with my team that is completely self-initiated. There are certain parameters for the design. Of course, it has to contain the information, but in terms of the actual look and feel, we can just do anything we like, which is really exciting.
Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, so what made you start up your own design company, and was it sort of daunting at first?
Funnily enough, I often refer to myself as an accidental entrepreneur because I didn't really intend to do this in quite this way. And I'd worked, as I said, for Conran for 4 years, and then I left there. I'd been doing various bits of work on the side in the evenings and at weekends and stuff from people who'd asked me, "Oh, could you try this?" And I felt that there was sort of bandwidth for me to try and do this sort of for a while after leaving there. So I had been there 4 years. I left, and by coincidence, funny how you push a door sometimes and they just go boom, everything just falls into place. And a friend ran a technology business near where I lived, and offered me like a desk to work at for some money each month. And so I took him up on it, and I was there for quite a while. But I gradually took on employees. We kind of like the thing had a kind of momentum of its own. So even though I hadn't really planned, the plan fell into place, shall we say? But I had to write business plans and all the rest of it. But that all came later, and so it was sort of it's sort of something that's evolved over time and continues to do so, I think, to a great extent. Although I'm much clearer about what we're doing now and where we're going from a business perspective.
So what advice would you give to other designers then, if they were thinking of setting up their own companies, how to sort of go where with?
Right. It's such a good question, and actually, I think the thing that I would do is to not do what I did. So, in essence, what I would suggest is that you first of all don't do it on your own. Have a really clear idea of what you want to do, how you want to do it, what your core ethos is. And also, having someone else who you work with who can be the strengths to your weaknesses, who you get on very well with, but who can kind of fill in the gaps, particularly for instance, things like money, business planning, project management, admin, all these kinds of things, which perhaps people don't really think about, but are super important in terms of delivering work and staying afloat. So yes, I don't do it on your own, and have a plan.
All right. Yeah, so you've done a lot of work for a huge range of different companies. What would you say the most interesting project you've ever worked on is?
Wow, that's really interesting. The one that immediately jumps to the top of my head is our work for Oddbins, the wine merchant. And just after the financial crisis, I got an email out the blue from them. I thought it was a prank, and saying, "Oh, we're looking for someone and to do some posters and some in-store signage," and we ended up doing everything. And it was really wonderful, very demanding, but a really viscerally exciting piece of work, because the work was on every street corner of the country, and it was just really an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, so then on the other side, what would you say the most sort of challenging project you've ever worked on is?
I don't know about challenging projects, but like challenging situations. And I often think about this, and when you design something and you try your hardest and you're really happy with what you've done, and you send it to the client and they don't like it, and it can be really dispiriting. But it happens, and it's inevitable, and it's part of the creative process is sometimes coming up with an answer that isn't quite right for the client. But sometimes they only know that when they look at it, and you can do something which you feel is right for them, but they don't agree. And so what I tend to suggest in that situation is that actually all is not lost, and that in fact, what the wrong answer, the thing that you come up with which they don't care for, tends to be a signpost to the right one. You go, well, what about it? Don't you get like, or don't you get like what's the problem? And they tend to say, well, I don't like our brand very much. I don't. And you, right. and then you kind of got a way out. There's a kind, and I think to listen to the client, and then so that's the difficult one. It's less to do with it's something that comes up now and again, but I try not to kind of make everyone feel bad about it, and try not to get too precious. That's vital.
So it's sort of a discussion with other people in your sort of team that you'd sort of work through negative feedback.
Yeah, and you've got to kind of like invariably pick up the phone, you know, or if possible, and just go, right, don't worry about it. We'll do something else.
Okay. Yeah, if you're ever faced with a brief that you find really challenging, you know, no sort of instant solution that comes to your mind, what sort of process do you go through to work that sort of through?
Right. The thing is, I've got people working for me, and if I don't have an answer, then one of those guys will. And I think teamwork is probably the answer to that question. A sense of collegiate working, and someone who works for you who may not have tackled a project like that before going, why don't we just do this? And you think, holy smokes, I never even thought of that. And I think I find that fantastic, is when, you know, you're kind of working as a team, and the person who's doing the, you know, comes up with an answer, and then you can kind of take it and run with it. So that's, I think, when you find something really, really difficult and don't know what on earth to do, if you don't, hopefully one of your team do. But then also, I think, you know, you can always get there in the end. Yeah. There you go. There's a motto for you.
Okay, yes. So my final question: what do you think the future of print and design will look like?
That's interesting. You know, there are so many people creating such an incredible work, and you only have to look at, there are many design websites out there, but to have a little look at those sites about all the incredible brands being launched every day, and we keep an eye on those things. And so the future doesn't just lie with me, of course, but across the plurality of creative people. But I think one way of answering your question actually is to do with print. You know, right now we're in a situation where everyone being sent everything digitally is amazing. You know, that it's saved our bacon, you know, in terms of communication and getting marketing messages across. But I think there's a place for the real object, the real thing, you know, lovely books. You know, there's a reason why bookshops are still open, why people want to give a beautiful monograph or a novel or something really special and share it. You can't do that with something on a Kindle or something. It's just not the same. And I think that's in some ways the future, by making those products, those pieces of print more enriched, more beautiful, more thoughtful, more specific to people who might really, really enjoy them, more finished, more polished, more, you know, all of those things. The real object's here to stay. I'm going to tell you that for free. And I think that that's and one thing I'm thinking about for next year is encouraging more people to do print marketing and then post it to their clients, even if it's their 25 key clients. I think it would be amazing just to sort of send something so they get it in the post. You know, right now we're like, the postman is like the most exciting thing in the day. That, you know, like there's nothing else coming through the door. You know, there's the Amazon man and then the postman. If you contact someone and you send them something amazing, they'll look at it. And I think that's the value of the rather than some kind of email attachment PDF thing.
Yeah, no, I certainly find that with even just the school publications, you know, having that tangible object after sort of weeks behind a desk, so you know, to actually then hold it in your hands. Yeah.
God, yeah, I really agree with that. Yeah, fantastic.
Right, well, thank you very much for talking to me. It's been really, yeah.
Well, it's my great pleasure, Sam. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this, and I really enjoyed your questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay, bye.